Welcome back to Season 6 of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth in successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falasz, and the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast is on the air. Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining me again this week. Recently, and based on what our listeners ask for, we've been doing a lot of talking about transactions and having conversations around selling all or part of your healthcare business. But we know that many of you are also in a very strong growth and expansion phase. So today we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about adding locations to your business. And to that end, we know that some of our listeners plan to grow through acquisition, while others have a de novo strategy, and some even have a mixed strategy for that matter, or just maybe they want to expand their footprint within what they already have. So what we've learned in talking with clients and colleagues is that there's some misconceptions and frankly, maybe a little fear around building from the ground up or expanding in any way. There's a lot that goes into it, meaning like site selection to working with the vendors. And this is all happening while you're trying to run your business. So it just doesn't have to be complicated. Although, yes, there's a lot involved with a new build or even an expansion or redesign of an existing space. But that's no reason to shy away from it. You simply need the right kind of experts and the right resources and information so you can feel confident in taking the next step for your business. So today, to help us work through this confidently, sort through how to avoid common stumbling blocks, as well as how to protect your money and your business in doing so, which are also really critical, is Andrew Medina, business development expert from Blue Frog. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jamie. Thank you for having me. We appreciate that. I definitely, I love the intro and definitely, sounds like you guys are very well versed in this world. And I love the conversation that you guys are about to have with us today. So
Well, thank you. And there's always more to learn. And especially from people like you, because I know when I met you, I'm like, well, tell me more about Blue Frog. And maybe that's a good place to start.
yeah,
Let's start with about Blue Frog, and then I want to ask you about your background as well.
100%. So Blue Frog in its entirety, we've been doing this for about 22 years now. So it started in 2004.
Okay.
They originally started in the dental space. And so that was just in local Atlanta, Georgia, doing small interior build outs and renovations for dental practices around the local area. And over the next 5 years, we began to grow kind of throughout Georgia, throughout the Southeast, a little bit here and there. And then the recession happened. So I think most people would remember that.
Yes.
From if you're watching this, you probably can tell that I was probably just in diapers at that point. Um, but
Thanks for
it,
making us all feel old,
very,
Andrew.
very challenging time for us all, for sure. But what happened to Blue Frog is that we pivoted a little bit during that time. A
Okay.
lot of the residential contractors flooded the market in '08. So all these guys who were building houses, they pivoted to the dental market. And so price per square foot, it was a bloodbath, a race to the bottom. Quality of work went down drastically. And we said, we got to get out of here before we go down with the boat as well. So we kind of pivoted and saw more open waters in the veterinary space. And we started building relationships with other banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Huntington Provide, all that stuff as well. And so we work with a lot of them. And as we began to dive more into the veterinary space, we found out that there was not a lot of people helping these veterinarians design their practices, build their practices, kind of guide them through this process. And
Mhm.
as you can tell in the most recent years, private equity and a lot of folks have jumped into that space and veterinary started to boom since COVID. So we got our hand in there pretty early, built great relationships. And as we built up our veterinary vertical throughout 2010, 2015, 2020, all was slow to come back behind that. And so I've kind of been brought on the team to help Blue Frog build that back up a little bit more as we do veterinary, dental, ASCs, opto, pretty much a well-rounded healthcare design build service is what we're running here at the shop. And so the company's grown from, I think it was maybe starting with 4 or 5 guys to begin with. And now we have about 60 folks in our office. We just finished our 40,000 square foot ground up in Athens, Georgia. We've got about 20,000 square feet allocated to us. And then the rest is kind of a hodgepodge between dentist, orthodontist, dermatology administration, and like a small physician as well. So we we've been growing a ton, like a week the last couple years. And so we're just excited to be here now doing podcasts with you guys.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like you really made a pivot at the right time and got a ton of experience under your belt. So I'm glad to have you here today and learn more about this. But before we jump into some of the questions that have kind of come to mind, tell me a little bit about you. How'd you end up where you are doing what you're doing?
Yeah, yeah. So I actually, this is not the industry I'm originally from. So when I graduated college, I had exercise sports science and sport management degrees. Graduated from University of Georgia in Athens, and I moved to Atlanta. I ran a small private gym, and we had one location. I worked my way up to under the owner. I ran a team of about 8 or 10 people. So management's kind of in my background,
Mhm.
and we had about 300 clients there. So remembering names, building a culture, all of that was very important to us as a gym because we didn't want to be one of the Globo gyms that, people walk in, buzz their card and walk back out. There's a place for it for sure, but we
Yeah.
wanted to create something where it was an experience, a memory, a place people wanted to come back to because they could kind of escape from reality. And so help that gym grow to a second location. We got that off the ground. We did a build out. It was the whole 9 yards. So I guess I have seen kind of the client side of this from that point of
Yes, you
view.
have.
Um, but yeah, I met the owner of this company at that gym, and so we built a relationship over about 2 years. After I'd been there for about 6 years, and I pulled a few men at that gym aside and said, "Hey, what were you guys doing in your like mid to late 20s that helped you get where you are today?" I pretty much interviewed them on the spot, and they were like, "Gosh, I don't know how to answer that question at 5:15 in the morning. I'm about to work out, man." I'm like, "Give me a cup of
It's a little
coffee first."
aggressive.
Yeah, and I was like, "All right, cool. Let's go grab coffee." And so met with a couple men, and Mike Rubio, the owner of this company, I met with him for breakfast one day, and he was like, "Hey, I want you to come by the office, meet the team, see what we do, and just go from there." Because he was like, "You've been selling at this gym the last half decade or so, whether you know it or not. The person you are, the conversations you've had, the retention you've been able to keep with the clients on personal training and group fitness, that is sales, and that's the product is this
It
environment,
is.
this gym." And for me, I was like, "Huh, I didn't think of it like that," because I honestly hated the sales process of being like, "Cost this much, 3 to 4 times a week, yada, yada, yada." I was like, "If they want to, they'll do it. If they don't, they don't." But, I started to realize that there's a little more to it than just a number and sign here.
Yeah.
So met the team, the culture was great, the people were amazing, the processes were smooth and sharp, and I was like, "This is not where I thought I'd be, but I'm excited to take a chance on this guy because of the culture that he built, because of the company he built, and how well it's ran." And I felt seen, and that was a big part of it, and that's
Mhm.
exactly what we wanna do with clients as we build their practices. Yeah, we're helping 1 doctor or 2 doctors depending on how many there are in the practice, but they go on to grow and help thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, especially with multi-location practices. And it's a bigger vision of, if I can help one doctor, they're going to help thousands in that career. If I can help a 10 location practice grow to 50 in, 5 to 10 years, we're helping tens of thousands of people at that point. And it's just kind of keeping that mindset for me to help stay encouraged in a sales world. So,
Yeah, and I think to your point about selling, sales
mm,
gets a bad reputation. It really
for sure.
does because so many of us that, again, found ourselves in healthcare or in dental specifically, and that's not where we planned to go initially. And going back 30 years, did not plan to be here. But you're stuck with me now because I'm not leaving. Sales isn't sales when you are setting someone up for the success you see for them. If you feel like you have to sell it, it's probably not the right thing for your client. And we do try to do that here very adamantly at
Mm,
Polaris. Like we can see where someone's path is going based on the information they give us. And you try to set them up with the right tools. It's not about selling a service, it's
mm,
helping someone get from point A to point Z.
mhm.
And that might change along the way. And one other thing you mentioned is you've got discipline baked into what you do from what I'm hearing from this gym experience. And it's not just the workout part, but it's going down the rabbit hole of how did you get where you're going, that line of questioning. So I really like that
Mhm.
about what you do and what you bring to the company. And I didn't know this until today.
Yeah. You learn
So
something
this is
new.
fun to learn about you, but it's discipline.
Mhm.
All the things that you do and the way that you set yourself up, that's discipline, and I can see that you do that for your clients as well. So,
Mhm.
again, happy to have you, and I have questions. So why don't we
Yes,
jump into them?
please, let's do it.
Okay, so my first one is around why should busy dentists not try to manage their own architects, contractors, and vendors themselves? Like, 'cause people just take this on and you can see the overwhelm.
Mhm.
So, it's probably a rhetorical question, but I'd like to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, exactly. I actually just had a call with a doctor after lunch, and they admitted that they had done this, and they felt a little more stressed out and a little more of a headache than they would have had if they kept out of it a little bit more. Not that they're hands off by any means, they're still calling the shots, but I guess a good metaphor is sports background. If you're the quarterback, you don't need to play every other position as well.
Good point.
So if you're the quarterback, you're handling the ball, you're making the decisions, you're scanning the defense, you're going over the design, you're kind of overviewing the layout, you're making sure these things that are happening in front of you are a-okay and you're still in the green. You get to choose where the ball goes, but you're not throwing it to yourself. You're going to have to trust
Mhm.
someone else to catch the ball and keep it moving down the field so you can get closer to the end zone. If the quarterback grabbed the ball and ran it every single play because he didn't trust the lineman to block, he didn't trust the running back to run it, he didn't trust the receiver to catch it, at that point, it becomes very challenging, and the doctor or the quarterback in this analogy takes on a lot more stress than need be. And we are the experts in what we do for a reason. Doctors go to school to get doctorates, and they know what they're doing very well. I'm not going to try and take my kid and give him braces at home because I think I can save a few bucks there.
Yeah,
I'm going to
don't
say,
do that.
that's over my head. I'm gonna take you to the dentist. Here you go, doc. Just tell me where to sign because that's less headache and less pain for me and for my kid at that point. And so
Yeah.
that, in short, is why I would say it's a lot easier to build a relationship with a company that does this for a living and has people who've seen a thing or two throughout the last 20 years or so of how these projects lay out. You can 100% call me, your project manager, superintendent who's overseeing the project, and have a conversation, ask questions. But if you're going to the site every single day, if you're trying to bypass the superintendent to ask the painter, hey, what's going on? You're
Mhm.
probably going to find out some information and things that are going to stress you out and concern you because you you wouldn't want to walk in on a mechanic who's pulling the engine out of your car while you're getting your car serviced because you're like, oh my gosh, my car exploded. What did you do to it? And
Yeah.
it's gonna start a whole rabbit hole of problems that you don't need. But if you trust the mechanic to do his job, he's gonna return it in one piece, and it's gonna work
Yeah.
great.
Well, and that's the biggest thing I wanna stress here is that working with experts takes you out of the position of being micromanager, and I say that because I know
Mhm,
what it's like to be one, because when you get passionate about something, you wanna get your hand in every aspect of it, when really the best thing to do is to sit back and rely on your experts. That doesn't mean, like you said, hands off.
mhm.
It just means put some trust in them, trust but verify. It's a running theme with everything that we do.
You still have the ball in your hands completely.
Yeah.
And I think and it also, I mean, this is something I've heard, our VP talk about is, the majority of the doctors that we're working with are already running a full-time practice. They already have their
Exactly.
hands in something else. That's your baby. Take care of that. Let us handle the legwork of getting this project up and off the ground from design to permitting to build and even to warranty, covering you on the back end, making sure that things are handled properly even after the finish line.
Yeah, and you can rest easy and not let it impact your productivity.
Exactly, 100%.
What do you find gets messy when dentists go from like single digit number of locations, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to double digit locations? Because we know a lot of our docs end up expanding into very large platforms. And how can they simplify that expansion with, using great partners like you?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you see it a lot, and I'm sure you have as well, and some doctors have felt this. But when you go from single digit to double digit, growth kind of exposes weaknesses or challenges in systems that what worked for 5 locations is not necessarily going to work for 15 locations.
Right.
And so from the beginning, it's all about trying to create a foundation that is repeatable, consistent, and can be scalable for the long term. So for us, when that happens, things get messy. It's usually because doctors were more focused on, I just want to grow, get out there, get more practices,
Yeah.
acquire. I'll do a de novo here. I'll do a de novo here. I'll acquire this one. And there's not really a plan in mind. They just are wanting to get out there and go. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's more of a, hey, is this wise or unwise question? Because, every office starts to feel a little bit different unless you are able to standardize early, like I said. Um,
Exactly.
and you're
Yeah.
spend a lot of time working in the business versus on the business. And so that growth model gets a little convoluted once you start having no plan. And you're just like, I'm
Yeah.
spending money left and right and now I'm broke.
Yeah, growing for the sake of growth. Like, you might be growing in numbers location-wise or adding ops or whatever you're doing, but if you're not doing it in a very systemized way, I mean, we say this I feel like I say this on every single episode. If your operations are not streamlined, if
Mhm.
your design is not streamlined. I mean, we know that identical ops really that's the way to go
Yeah.
because you can interchange teams, you can interchange locations, and it doesn't impact your productivity like plugging people in where they're going to feel like fish out of water. And
Yep.
having been a temp hygienist at various times during my clinical career, wow, does it slow you down. Even when you're trying really hard to keep up, it's a tough day.
Yeah.
It's a really tough day.
Yeah. So you're
Um,
like you
Go
said,
ahead.
sorry, your staff feels it. Everybody feels the pain of a
Yes.
non-structured plan to grow.
Yeah.
Makes teaching everyone a lot harder.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we have clients in for what's called a discovery day, when they
Okay.
just don't really know what their path is. They kinda know where they wanna go, but they
Mhm.
don't really know how to get there. So we help map that out, and we use their financials to do it, and that's a good thing to incorporate. Options like you and your strategies that can really help nail down different options for whatever path that they plan to choose.
Yep.
And that kind of
Exactly.
brings me to my next question. We work with a lot of clients that are expanding by de novo, some by acquisition, some, both, obviously. Can we briefly look at how you work with each of them? Because sometimes, it's the same client, like I said, with that mixed strategy.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to be a conversation that we have on the front end. So, we always want to talk about your why for one to get the heart behind
Hmm.
it, and two, and I mean, most people's why is I want to make more money, and I think any
Yeah.
business at the end of the day, it has to make money to survive. Culture has a huge point in that, how you treat your clients and your patients, how your front desk interacts with your doctors, that all plays a huge, huge part into it. But at the end of the day, a lot of this is how do I make enough money to do this again, like you said, to either acquire or to do de novo. But for us, it's having that conversation of your why and then figuring out what is the end goal and then working
Hmm.
backwards from there.
Yeah.
My experience in the fitness world is whenever I talked with a new client, I was like, hey, what is your goal for being here? What do you want to get out of this? What is the result and destination you want to be at when this is all said and done so that you spend your money wisely and not just haphazardly? And so if there are practices that want to grow a few de novo here, a few acquisitions here, it's figuring out where we fit in that equation. If you're doing an acquisition of a practice that was built 5 years ago, we can take a look at it and kind of make sure that everything looks all right when you're signing the agreement to get out there with you to make sure the roof looks good, the HVAC, the electrical, all that's in place. So it's a smart decision.
Hmm.
But where we're really going to be able to flex the muscle is going to be in the de novo side where we're actually designing, we're redesigning a current layout, or we're doing a ground up or whatever it may be. We're helping with the flow and the feel of the practice to mimic what you already have. So when you bring on new doctors, like you said earlier, it's easily teachable, it's scalable. You can kind of hit the ground running a lot faster.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And just to be clear, can you walk through? You start at site selection, correct?
Yeah, we can definitely help out with that. And so when it comes to ground up specifically, we have a team, and I can go into this at the end if you'd like to, but kind of what Blue Frog has to offer is we have a full design team. So all in
Okay.
house. I could walk downstairs right now to talk to our design team, our interior designer, our architect, civil engineer as well. We just brought them on about a year and a half ago to help with the ground ups. So when it comes to site selection, before they even purchase the land, we can do what's called a feasibility study.
Hmm.
And our civil engineer will get in contact with the city, help with zoning, make sure if there's anything that needs to be annexed. We just find out a slew of information about this piece of property that, hey, is this even feasible for you to take a step forward with building your project here? Or are you about to drop $1 million, couple $100,000 or more on this plot of land that you can't even use for what you want?
Oh,
So
okay.
that takes away a lot of the question marks in the process for the doctors early on, and we're able to help them get that squared away. Step one. Then when they purchase the land, we jump into what it looks like for a test fit, a budget estimate, kind of getting the numbers in line, the flow, the practice in line. And then if all that looks good, we go into signing and design.
Okay. Yeah, sorry if I jumped ahead a little bit. I was thinking like site selection, design, permitting, construction, and you guys cover all of that. I know you
Exactly.
you probably had this at a different section to talk about, but it jumped into my brain and I went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. No, no, it's perfect.
So now I'm curious, what are some of the biggest mistakes that group owners make when they're building or expanding? Because I think there's a lot of room for that when you're not working with the right people. And most importantly, how do you avoid losing time and money? Because you just, brought that up. That just kind of popped into my head.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say when most people are starting out like earlier on, obviously, if you've built 10, 15, 20 practices, you probably got a good feel on what works best for you because you felt the pain of the
Mhm.
mistakes you've made in the past. But early on, when these doctors are growing their practice, uh, typically it can be a race to the bottom. We see that a lot of times where it's like, hey, I'll talk to, 5 different general contractors and I have my set of plans in hand and they all come back with differing numbers. And then I immediately ignore the top 3 highest numbers, and I only respond to the last 2 who are the cheapest. And it's not a bad thing, but they basically pit them against each other where, "Hey, can you get this a little bit lower for me? Can you get this a little bit lower for me?" And they go back and forth, scraping the top off until they get to the bare bones. And now what you have designed and what they're pricing aren't even the same thing. And that's when a really big problem happens on construction. You get out there and change orders start flying. And yeah, that's never a fun thing for the doctor because you get delays, you start spending money you didn't expect. You thought it costed this amount, now it's this amount. Um, and those delays are also costing you money. That's not the price anymore. That's the cost of losing time on a construction site because we were trying to get this as cheap as possible. And I don't think any group or doctor would give their services away for as cheap as a client would want it. You know,
No, no,
it's
I
like,
can't
"No, this
imagine
is."
this conversation. You're going in for a root canal or a crown. You're like, let's negotiate. Let me pit some offices. Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
like, how about
No.
$200 for the set of braces, a root canal, and some teeth whitening? Sound good? And
Yeah.
it's like, "No." And if you want something for $200, here's what I can give you, but that's it. And so you just kinda have to remind them that, your services aren't cheap as dirt. Neither is building an entire healthcare practice or helping it grow. And because it's so complex, just like their work, it's gonna come at a reasonable cost or even sometimes a premium, especially with design build, because you're getting a one-stop shop. You're under one umbrella. You have one point of contact, and it takes all the cooks out of the kitchen. Where now we have chef, I don't do the architect designing or the building, but let's say Chef Andrew is behind the kitchen and he's kind of commanding everyone to kind of do what they need to do. Um, and that's great. But once you add 3 cooks in the back and they're pointing in different directions, the
Nope.
subcontractors, the project managers, they're like, I don't know what to do. And now there's delays again. Now there's change orders. Now there's costs again. And so it just helps things flow a little bit easier when you take all the cooks out of the kitchen, have one point of contact, and use that design builder to walk you through the entire process.
Yeah, agree. You've got to rely on the experts. This is not the time to bargain shop, while at the same time, you should examine the numbers.
Yeah.
You should make sure that this aligns with your budget. And maybe that means you make changes where your equipment comes in. Maybe you're making changes on certain design elements to help you fine tune to get what you need, but you want to work with the right experts who know what they're doing and have experience.
Yeah. It's
Not the
all about
time to go
relationship.
price shopping.
Yeah, exactly. I think some doctors also talking about the mistakes they make sometimes is they can treat every project like it's the first one instead of kind of going off of what worked in the last project and
Yeah.
keeping it that way. Where it's if we did the first project right, we had the right conversations, we have the flow down. Let's not change a good thing. You can update the finishes and make it look a little prettier, but the flow that you have, if it's an easily replicable model, keep it that way. Let's not reinvent
Yeah.
the wheel. Let's do what works and keep that going down the line. But sometimes they get to a different project and wanna change everything about it, and it's like,
Mhm.
that may not be the best idea, but, you know.
No, that's a really big workflow disruption. So, unless you're going to make a change that's a big change overall for the betterment of your entire business and you're going to replicate throughout, which of course could be costly,
Mhm.
changing it every single time for the sake of changing it and doing something new doesn't make sense to me as a clinician sitting in the operatory.
Yeah.
Like, you've just complicated my day and slowed me down.
Mhm.
So,
Exactly. Yeah, each
uh,
decision from the top, it affects everyone below them.
yes, exactly. So, how do you design practices differently when you know you're planning to grow? Kind of on that same note.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the goal, like I said, always starting at the end and working backwards, figuring out where we want to end up, going to Z or going to the destination, and then working our way backwards of how can we build this plan with the end in mind. And I think
Mhm.
with anything in life, that's how you want to go about it. You're planning a vacation. You don't just hop in the car and start driving somewhere. You pick the location you want to go to, you find the restaurants you want to hang out at, the activities you want to do, and you plan it all from home. And once that's done, you book it and then you hop in the car and start taking steps to making this happen. There's no sense in putting all the pressure on yourself to make decisions on the fly while driving down the road
Mm,
because you feel like you have no time.
yeah.
That's one of the thing I see a lot of times too is doctors wait to the last minute to make a move, and then they feel so rushed that they put all the pressure on all the vendors and teams that are working for them is, "I need this tomorrow. I need this tomorrow." Well, doc, you haven't given me much information on the things I've already asked you for. And they're like, "Oh, I can't get all this done." And it's like, well, maybe we should have allocated a little more time for conversations, for new ideas, for differing designs, just for the whole flow, even from a banking standpoint, a real estate standpoint, equipment standpoint. Those conversations do take some time. People go on vacations, people do other things, but at the end of the day, it's we want to have ample time to make this right for you. We don't want to be under the gun trying to press this as fast as possible because I mean, if you sprinted at any time recently, you probably tripped, stumbled. We haven't sprinted all that much after 18 years old. So it's a little bit challenging to move that fast when you haven't been moving that fast in your practice. But now that the pressure's on to build this, it's full steam ahead, and now I'm just picking at will whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. And reveal something about myself. I am a sprinter. I do it a couple times a week. So
Yeah, there you go. I
I
love
still
that.
stumble,
Yeah.
but yes, in most things in life, I think we can say with a good deal of certainty that things that are done quickly cost more. Full stop. Because if you're in a hurry, you've got to throw more money at it to make it happen in the timeline that you want to make it happen. And it's just not the sensible way to go about things. You really have to make the time, set it up properly, think about your end in mind. If you've listened to this podcast before, our listeners know that's another theme on just about every episode, starting with the end in mind. And I love that that's your philosophy too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, when you take an honest look at when design build is not the right fit. Like, what are the biggest screw ups that you see during design and the construction phase and how that was dealt with?
Yeah, I'll
Because it's
say
not always a one size fits all, I'm sure.
no, no, it's different for every project, and when there are mishaps, you hate it,
Yeah.
but it's all about how you respond to those mishaps. I think that's with anyone in life. No one's perfect, no company's perfect. It's all about how you step in, get in the mud with them, and figure out a solution for them. So, we definitely have had our fair share of mistakes. Any company that says they're perfect or that they're gonna make sure that every project goes smoothly, it I wouldn't trust them.
That's fair.
We do yeah, but for us, when there's mistakes in, let's say, the design stage and they don't get found out until construction. Let's say there's some med gas piping that was missed, dimensions were off in a operatory, there was not enough space for this piece of equipment, and it points back to our design team. That's
Mhm.
where we step up to the plate and say, "Hey, doc, you're not getting a change order for that. That's something that we messed up on in design. We're the architect. We're gonna own that, put the hand up confidently. We're not gonna give you a change order. We're gonna fix that. That's coming out of our pocket." That has been normal for me because that's how Blue Frog has done this. I have
Yeah.
come to learn the last half decade that GCs don't care whose mistake it was. If they're
Mhm.
doing extra work that's not on the plans, they are going to change order you. And I hate that because it doesn't make sense. If
No.
that's a mistake for the design team, if we're the ones that designed it, then we're going to have to front the cost for that because that's our mistake. We're not afraid to take ownership. So that's happened on a few projects before where we were like, man, this got missed. It got slipped in design. Not sure how it happened, but you're not going to feel the financial pain point of that. We're going to make sure we fix this for you ASAP, get you back on schedule, and get you in there as soon as possible. Other things that can happen is just miscommunication on site, on job sites. Because, like you said, if doctors start poking their head around asking subcontractors what to do, maybe the doctor skips past the superintendent who's on site and bypasses the project manager and says, "Hey, Mr. Painter, can you actually do this, this, and this while you're here?" Or, "Hey, framer, don't forget to do this over here." Or, "Hey, electrician, I need something ran over here." If we don't know about that and the electrician does that, he's going to expect some money for that work.
Well, yeah.
And then he comes at us like we're supposed to be paying. We're like, "We didn't hear about this. I don't know where that came from." And so that's a whole thing where there's a lot of confusion, loss of communication, and things were handled improperly. The chain of order, chain of command was bypassed, and now we're in a problem that we're not even sure where it came from until we have those conversations and find out that, oh, the doctor was playing quarterback and tight end and receiver and defense. And it's like, we don't need that. All it has to be is an easy email, text, call, communicate first, have that back and forth. And usually a lot of these problems can be avoided, especially when you have those conversations in design.
Yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen. Coming back to that analogy and the sports analogy make perfect sense to me. You can't catch the ball that you just threw.
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
yeah, outside of that, like that speaks to a lot of trust and communication. But um, I will say the projects that I've done sometimes where we're just the GC, so we can kind of a la carte ourselves. So speaking to some of the groups that have designers on their team already, and they're getting their floor plan and layout put together, their construction stands done, and they're just needing to bid this out. Sometimes we'll see quasi full sets of plans where
Yeah.
we've got the information, but the finished schedule is missing. So when we
Oh,
send this out for pricing, it's like, great, we got a couple RFIs on what we need. RFIs are request for information. And these subcontractors or trade partners are asking, "Hey, like I don't have all the information here. I can just give an allowance for you guys. Does that work?" And we're like, "Sure, we don't they didn't give us anything else. This is all we have right now."
yeah.
So when that comes back in, we have an allowance. We try to make it, enough to have them covered, but it's not a guarantee. That's not their hard quote. That's an estimate or an
Mm,
allowance. Then when you get on the job site, and the architect is like, "Okay, hey, time to make these decisions for the finishes here, the paint here, what we're going to mark up here." The subcontractor and trade partner is not going to see that as, "Oh, they chose something that was a little less expensive. I'll go ahead and bring my cost down."
no,
They're going to see that second round of questioning as, this is an opportunity to make money here. So it either always is going to stay the same price or go up. So if we don't get a fully executed set of plans that has the finished schedule and everything involved in it where they did their due diligence and design, and we price that out, then we're definitely going to have increases in price in construction. There's going to be change orders if those plans are not fully executed. And that's what our team does a great job at. And I appreciate is when we do design build, I can confidently know that when those get sent out for pricing, those numbers that come back, that's a true quote with everything accounted for.
that's great. And honestly, that transparency is what protects our clients' money. At the
Oh,
end
yeah.
of the day, that's how you earn trust and your accountability is evidence. You've
Mm.
you've baked that into the process. And we love that you think like we do, but still, you're bringing something so fresh to the table for clients where maybe they haven't thought of these different avenues before. We've got the same kind of strategy, but
Mhm.
let's incorporate some different ideas into this. And I think you've got a wonderful take on what's possible within your growth plans, really. So, Andrew, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time and all the info and resources. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Either email or phone number. I definitely can shoot that over.
Yeah, I will actually add that information to the show notes. That way you can get in touch with Andrew easily. And to our audience, we love the questions that you send us. So keep them coming and we'll keep delivering the content that you ask us for. As always, if you want to learn about any of our Polaris expert advisory services, or maybe there's a topic that we haven't covered yet that you'd like to hear about, you can send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com and be sure to visit our website at polarishealthcarepartners.com where you find weekly articles to grow and support your healthcare business, along with access to all of our podcast episodes, events, and a whole lot more. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a colleague and be sure to leave us a rating on any of your favorite podcast platforms. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast.